So in the last session, we have discussed how to write some small programs by using Apex programming, and how can we perform the basic mathematical calculations by using the Apex programming. Okay, we have discussed. Okay, now let's see some more programs so that you can feel comfortable with the programming part. Okay, now so let's write a small program. Write an Apex program to find out the sum of first 100 numbers. Write an Apex program to find out the sum of first 100 numbers. You are having so many numerical values are available, like as 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. We are having that numerical values up to 100. Now my requirement is I want to get the sum of all the first 100 numbers, like as 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, 4 plus, like that up to 100. I want the sum of all the first 100 numbers. Then how can we do this one? Do we have any shortcut mechanism? Is there any formula? Yes, there is a formula. What is that? N into n plus 1 by 2. There is a shortcut formula is available. N into n plus 1 by 2. So this is the formula that we have right now. N means what? The maximum number. Nothing but for what, till what number you would like to get the sum. I want to get the sum of first 100 numbers, so that we have to pass that n value as 100. That's it. Okay. So in this case, we have to define a variable, okay, with the name n, or you can give any variable name also. And then once a value has been getting assigned, then apply the formula, and then we can do the calculation, and we can get the sum of the first 100 numbers also. Okay, clear? Now, so now let's see how can we use this formula in order to implement this functionality. Now let's see practically. Now, so I would like to define a variable in order to store that n value. Okay, to store that n value, I'm defining a small variable. So let me go to the execute anonymous window. I'm going to the developer console, and I want to open that execute anonymous window. So how can we open the execute anonymous window now? What is that navigation? Control E. Okay, go to that Control E, and then open that execute anonymous window, maximize that window now, and then write the piece of code. Okay, now. So now here I'm going to be writing some small piece of code. Like I would like to define a number here. Integer, some max number. I want to generate, okay, I want to get the sum of first 100 numbers. So that to store the value 100, I'm going to be using that variable called as max number. Now to store the total sum, I'm using a variable called as total sum. Okay, the total sum. In order to store the result of that formula, result of that expression, to get the total value here, to store the total value, I'm using this total sum variable. Now, after that, what we need to do? What is the second step? What is the max number value by default? Null. Then what do you want to do? I want to assign the value here. Right. Max number. What is the value you want me to assign? 100. Because I need to get the sum of first 100 numbers, so that I'm storing that value 100 inside the variable called as max number. Now, next. Then, after that, what we can do? So now whatever the input values are required, this input value is available right now with me. N means what? The maximum number. Okay. I want to calculate the sum of the first 100 numbers, so that I'm passing that value 100 for the variable here. Now, whatever the inputs are required for my formula, the inputs are available with me. Now, I want to prepare this expression. I want to prepare this formula in order to calculate the sum of the first 100 numbers. Now, I would like to use this formula. N into n plus 1 by 2. Max number into the max number plus 1 by 2. Then how can we write this one? Do I need to write like this here? By 2, do I need to write like this? No. Salesforce won't accept here. In this case, the whole by 2. So now this is the whole number here. The whole value I am collecting, and then I am going to be dividing by 2. Okay. So now here I am collecting that whole value, n into n plus 1, the whole value I am collecting, I am going to be dividing that value by 2. Now I want to store the result inside my variable total sum. Okay, I'm storing the result inside that total sum variable. Now display the value. System.debug. Sum of first, I want to show that. Sum of first 100. Okay, for that one to display the value 100, I'm using this formatting output. I'm using that max number variable value. Numbers are, I want to show the total sum. Okay, that means here I am going to be using the straightforward formula. So now already as part of our childhood inside the mathematics we have discussed, to calculate the first n number of values sum, we are using that n into n plus 1 by 2. I am using the same formula, and then I am going to be doing the calculation, and I am storing the result inside the variable, and then I am displaying the result. Now the sum of first, I want to show 100. Numbers are, that means here to display the result very meaningful format, sum of the first 100 numbers are, I want to show that. For that one to display that, the max number value, I am using this formatting output. And then we can display the value total sum. Like as the sum of the first 100 numbers are, we can display the value here. Okay? Understood that? Now let's execute this code. Click on execute. The request has been sent to the server. Go to the developer console and see the results. Select the debug only checkbox. Now it is indicating the sum of first 100 numbers are 5050. Suppose for example, I want to get the sum of first 50 numbers, then what we can do? Instead of this 100, we have to specify the value 50. Okay? Now, click on execute. We can get the sum of the first 50 numbers. Select the debug only checkbox. Now it is indicating sum of first 50 numbers are 1275. Like that, we can able to calculate that sum of the first n numbers also, okay, by passing that input value at runtime here. Okay, clear? Now, make a note of this one. Done? Now, write one more small program. So write an Apex program to find out the simple interest. To find out the simple interest. Write an Apex program to find out the simple interest. Now, so now tell me, do we have any formula to calculate that simple interest? Yes, there is a straightforward formula is there. What is that? PTR by 100. Okay, now, in order to do that calculation, we have to supply the values. How many input values we need to supply? 3 values. First one is the principal amount. Second one, tenure, that means the time period in terms of months. Third one, rate of interest. Okay, now these are the 3 input values are required. Based on that 3 input values, we can able to prepare the formula and we can able to calculate that simple interest. For a specific principal amount, okay, based on a specific interest rate, okay, for a specific time period, we can able to calculate. Okay, now, so now let's see how can we write this one. So now I need to define 3 variables here. All these 3 variables will be of type what? Integer. Because here I would like to store the principal amount, that is also a numerical, rate of interest, that is also numerical, and then tenure, that is also numerical. So I would like to define 3 integer variables now. I am defining the variables here. Principal amount, tenure, rate of interest. Okay, rate of interest. So these are the 3 input values we need to supply to my formula. So based on that, we can able to calculate the simple interest. Now, whatever the interest amount has been generated, I want to store that value. For that one, I am using one more variable, interest value or interest amount. Okay, interest amount. To store that interest amount, I am using a separate variable here. So that totally I have defined 4 variables. In order to store the principal amount, I am using one variable, tenure one more variable, rate of interest one more variable. To store that, the interest amount value, I am using one more variable. Now, so now tell me for which variables we need to assign the values. Principal amount and then tenure and rate of interest. Okay, for these 3 variables we have to assign the values because we need to pass these 3 values as input to my formula. Okay, now I am assigning the values here. Principal amount, I am assigning like some 10,000. Some tenure equals to like some 5 months. Okay, tenure will be in terms of 5 months. Rate of interest, I am indicating some 3%. Okay, I am indicating some 3%. So now I would like to calculate that simple interest based on some principal amount 10,000 and the tenure is for 5 months, rate of interest is some 3%. Now how can we calculate that simple interest over here? Interest amount equals to, what is the formula? PTR by 100. P means what? Principal amount into tenure into rate of interest. I am doing that multiplication of all these 3 values by 100. I am dividing that whole value by 100. Then we can show that simple interest amount here. Interest amount is, I want to show that. Okay, I am displaying that interest amount variable value. So now, in order to calculate that simple interest, we need that the 3 input values, principal amount, tenure, and the rate of interest. And then so that I have defined these 3 variables, and then I have assigned the values for these 3 variables. I am using the formula PTR by 100, and then I am going to be doing the calculation. And based on that formula, based on the expression, I am doing the calculation, and the result I am storing inside the interest variable, and that interest amount value I am displaying over here. Okay. Whenever we are working on any example as part of the development, please identify what they have given, what they are expecting. That's it. Okay. So what input they have given, what output they are expecting. So based on that input, how to achieve that output, how to get that output value, we can decide that. So that we need to get the required input values, and then only we can able to supply those input values for the formula or for the expression. Based on that formula, we can able to get the result we can able to represent. So that in order to implement the operations, whatever the input values are required, first of all, we have to supply the input values. Based on that input values, we can able to do the required calculations. Okay. Now, so now let me execute this piece of code. Click on execute. The request has been sent to the server. It is loading the debug log file. Select the debug only checkbox. Now it is indicating that interest amount is 1500. Okay, the interest amount is 1500. Now, suppose for example, I am giving the tenure as on 15 months. Okay, 15 months. Now, click on execute. See the results. For the 15 months, you have to pay that interest amount as 4,500. Like that depends upon the input values which are supplied. We can do the calculation based on the formula or expression, and then we can able to find out the results also. Okay? Clear? Clear up to now? How to write some small programs, how to define the variables, how to assign some value, how to do the calculations, printing the results, all these things? Comfortable or not? Okay. Okay. Now, so make a note of some assignments. First one. Write an Apex program to calculate the total marks and average marks of a student. Here I am giving the note point here. We have 5 subjects. For the student. Write an Apex program to calculate the total marks and average marks of a student. I have a student, he has given some exams. So in those exams, he got some marks. So out of 100, he got some marks in each and every subject. So now I would like to calculate the total marks of that student. I would like to calculate average marks. Okay. Now tell me, how can you implement this one? How many variables we need to define? 5. Okay, to supply that 5 input values, nothing but 5 subject marks, we need 5 variables. And then to store the total, 1 more variable. To store the average, 1 more variable. Totally 7 variables of type integer. Okay, now, and then do the calculation. You know that. How to calculate the sum of all the 5 subjects here. Okay, so now use that plus symbol to do the calculation, and then calculate the average. That means here total marks by number of subjects. Okay, now you know that. Next one. Write an Apex program. Write an Apex program to calculate the bill amount based on the quantity and unit price. Based on the quantity and unit price. Now tell me, how can we do this one? Suppose I went to a supermarket, okay, to buy some fruits. So I would like to buy some apples. Each apple cost is some 40 rupees. I'm purchasing some 15 apples. Quantity is what? 15. Unit price is what? 40. How can we get the bill amount? How much amount that we need to pay to the supermarket people? Quantity into unit price. Okay, we have to use that straightforward formula here. So now how many variables we need to define in this case? 3 variables. The first 2 variables are for, one is for quantity, second one is for unit price. The third one is to calculate that bill amount. Okay, now next, the third one. Write an Apex program to convert the temperature from Fahrenheit to centigrade. Fahrenheit to centigrade. There is a straightforward formula is available to convert the temperature from Fahrenheit to centigrade and the vice versa also. Directly we can go to the Google and we can get the straightforward formula. Okay. Now, next, write an Apex program to convert the temperature from centigrade to Fahrenheit. Centigrade to Fahrenheit. So these are the 4 assignments. Done? Now, so now do these 4 assignments today here. Now let's see. Now for example, so let me take the previous assignment or the previous example, whatever we have implemented. I would like to take that example. I want to perform the mathematical calculations on the 2 numerical values. Okay, I would like to perform the mathematical calculations on these 2 numerical values. Now, I want to perform the mathematical calculations on these 2 numerical values. So now upon doing this kind of operation, what kind of results will be getting arised? What kind of errors will be getting arised depends upon the input. Now let's see practically and how can we handle those kind of errors, we'll see. Okay, now. So now I'm defining 2 variables like as some x and some y. 2 variables I'm defining here. Okay, I'm defining the 2 variables x and the y. Both will be of type numerical. I'm assigning some value for the x variable. X equals to some 1200 and the y equals to some 20. I'm assigning some values. For both the variables, I'm assigning some value. Both are of type numerical, so that I'm assigning the numerical values for these variables. Now I want to do some calculations here. System.debug. Addition result is. Now what we can do? Plus, I want to do that addition operation. How can we do that one? X plus Y. Can I write like this? If I am writing like this, then what is the result now? Simply what it will do is, it will collect the first two values, okay, this value and this value. It will be printing both here, okay, concatenation. So now the addition result is, it will display that value. Now X value is some 1200. And then after that, it will be treating the center value as a string. It will be concatenating that Y also. Like I will be displaying that the value. It will display that result as addition result is. So now here is the value here, 1,20,020. Is it a correct one? No. So in this case, what needs to be done? I don't want to concatenate. I want to perform the addition on these two values. So that here I am going to display placing inside that braces. Okay. That means here, please perform these two operations separately. This is the operation. Please perform this operation separately. And then only whatever the result is available, concatenate this result with this particular message over here. Okay. So now previously we have written this this implementation by using two lines of code. There I have used one more variable that is called as result variable. There I have stored that value of X plus Y, and that result value I am displaying in this location. But now, instead of writing two lines of code, I am going to be reducing that code into a single line itself. Because always we have to go with the optimized way. We can't make that code lengthy. We can't write the code in the form of a complexity format. Always you have to make your code generic. We have to make your code optimized always. Because we are having the limitation of upon writing that code up to 60 lakhs characters only, which can't be extendable. Okay? Now. So now in this case here, I want to perform the subtraction operation. Then what we can do? Subtraction result is, then how can we do this one? X minus Y. I want to do the multiplication over here. Multiplication result is, how can we do that? X into Y. I want to do that division operation. How can we do that one? Division result is, I want to show that. How can we do that one? X by Y. I want to do that modulus operation. Modulus result is, I want to do that. How can we do this one? Math dot mod. Okay. We need to supply the value X comma Y. We can able to perform this operation. Previously, to implement this functionality, we have written the two lines of code. We have assigned the values for these variables, and then to perform the addition, 2 lines of code. For the subtraction, 2 more lines. For the multiplication, 2 more lines. Division, 2 more lines, like that we have written. But now we are optimizing that code. Instead of using this separate variable, instead of performing the operation separately, we are going to be substituting this particular variable with this expression itself. Okay. So in this case here, previously, we are going to be performing the operation separately. The result I am storing inside a variable. That variable I am going to be displaying inside my system.debug statement. Instead of using this third variable separately, directly we can able to substitute this particular expression inside your system.debug statement itself, so that we can reduce that number of lines of code. Okay, so that we can make our application simple. We can reduce that code also, so that if the number of lines of code is reduced, automatically compilation time will be getting reduced, execution time will be getting reduced, it will be improving that application performance as well. Okay, clear? Now. So now let's see. So now how can we perform these operations? Now click on execute. We can see the result of all these 5 operations. Select the debug only checkbox. Now we can see all the 5 operations results. Addition result, subtraction result, multiplication result, division result, and the modulus result also. Okay, all the 5 operation results we are able to fetch right now. Okay, now, so now here I have defined the 2 variables, and I have assigned the values and performing the mathematical calculations on all these values over here. Okay, clear up to now? So now in this case, suppose for example, if the user has entered the second number value as 0, what will happen in this case? First number is 1200, second number is 0. So I'm executing addition and subtraction here. I'm selecting only these lines of code. I'm executing up to this selected lines of code only here by using execute highlighted button. Request as sent to the server. Let's see the result. Only those two statements will be getting performed, like as addition result and the subtraction result. Okay, both will be getting visibility. Now I'm using the multiplication result also. I'm doing the multiplication operation also. Click on execute highlighted, request as sent to the server. Select the debug only checkbox. Now it is going to be displaying that all the three operation results. Whenever you are multiplying a number by 0, always the result will be 0 again. So now we are able to see that all the three results. Now I am going to including the division operation also. Once you click on execute button, execute highlighted, what will happen in this case? What is the result of division operation? What we are doing now? X by y, that means 1200 by 0. Infinitive. You know that a universal truth as part of your education during the mathematics, that we can't divide a number by 0. Okay? We can't divide a number by 0. Whenever I'm dividing the number by 0, it is returning the result as infinitive. But we don't have any such a data type in any programming language, not only in Apex, in any programming language, whatever we have in our IT industry. It may be the modern programming languages also, which are available in the market right now, which may be coming in the future also, whatever it may be. It may be the modern programming languages also. So now we don't have any such facility, we don't have any such a data type in order to store the value of infinitive. Okay? So now we don't have any such a data type to store the value of infinitive in any other programming language. At that time, when you try to perform this division operation here, up to the addition, subtraction, multiplication is working very fine. When I try to use the division operation also, now let's see, click on execute highlighted. It is raising an exception. System.map exception divided by 0. That means what? You are performing the division operation by a number called as 0, which is returning the result as infinitive, but we don't have any such a data type. We don't have the capability to store the value infinitive. We can't recognize that. So in this case, when coming to the Apex programming, it is unable to handle these kind of situations. What we can do? So I'm expecting a normal string value, integer value, double value, anything, but it is giving some other than these values. It is giving a different value which I can't recognize. Then what we can do? In this case, it is stopping your application execution process. Immediately it is showing that message to you so that there is an exception. Okay? There is an unexpected thing has been happened. Something went wrong. I am unable to handle that situation, so that I am closing your application automatically. So in this case, it is going to be raising an exception over here. Then what do you mean by an exception in this case? What do you mean by an exception? So what do you mean by exception? Then, in programming part, generally. Okay, now, let me explain that here. For example, I am developing a small application. Okay, I am developing a small application. So that I am writing some piece of code inside a file. I am having a file here. Okay, I am having a file. Inside this file, I am writing some piece of code. Like this is called as source code. Source code by using the Apex programming. By using this Apex programming language, I have written some piece of code here, which is called as source code. So now this code has been stored inside a file. When coming to the Apex programming, your Apex class file will be storing with the extension what? .apex C. Okay. Now, so this is the file extension. For example, I'm having that file called as some sample.apxc, which is an Apex class. C means class. So now this is my Apex class. Inside that file, I have written some piece of code by using Apex programming language. Now, so once the code has been getting written by the developer, so whatever the code they have written, that code is called as source code. Okay, that code is called as source code. Whatever the code we are writing to implement the application functionality, that code is called as source code. Once the code has been written by the developer, then what we can do? What is the next step? Do I need to execute that code directly? No. Before executing the code, first of all, it has to verify whether this code has been prepared based on the rules, based on the principles, based on the syntaxes, based on the standards, based on the guidelines of the Apex programming language. Who will verify all these things? Compiler. So now whenever the compiler is going to be verifying that the syntactical mistakes of that code, then this process is called as what? This component is called as what? Compiler. This process is called as compilation process. So that here, once the code has been getting written by the developer, then this code has to be sent to the compiler here. We are sending that code to that compiler for the compilation. You will be having that compilation process. Now, what is the compiler for your Apex programming now? What is the compiler for Apex programming? Apex compiler. Okay, Apex compiler. That already we have discussed during our application execution life cycle. There already we have discussed that in order to compile your code, you will be having that Apex compiler. Okay. We are having a compiler called as Apex compiler. So now after writing this code, then as soon as when you click on that save button, first of all the code will be sending for that compilation process here. Every programming language is having its own compiler which is going to be compiling the code here. Now upon compiling the code, okay, there will be some mistakes maybe getting arised. Because whatever the code that I have written, upon writing this code, okay, upon writing this code, sometimes I forgot to specify the semicolon here. I forgot to specify the semicolon. Sometimes I forgot to close this single quote here properly. These are some mistakes or not? Yes. As a human being, we can do some mistakes. Okay? But we are doing some mistakes also here. But in this case, even though as a person, if I am doing some mistake, my application should be able to recognize that. My application has to handle those things here. Then in this case, what needs to be done? Whenever I am trying to be compiling the code, first of all, it will verify. So do we have any syntactical mistakes available inside the code or not? If there is any mistakes are available, then what it will do immediately, it is sending the response back to the developer. Boss, this is a mistake you have done. So these are the various problems are available upon compilation. So please correct that code. Please resubmit the code for the recompilation process for me. So in this case, upon compiling the code, whatever the mistakes has been identified by that compiler, those mistakes are called as compilation errors. Okay, those are called as compilation errors. Those are called as compilation errors. So now upon compiling the code, whatever the errors has been occurred, so now those errors are called as compilation errors. So in this case, what kind of compilation errors will be getting arise? Why the compilation errors will be getting arise? Because of syntactical mistakes. Okay, because of syntactical mistakes. That means upon writing that code, I haven't closed that braces properly. I forgot to close the braces. I forgot to stop that statement with a semicolon. I forgot to close the single quote here. So I did some mistakes, so some small mistakes I did. So this kind of the syntactical mistakes are comes under compilation errors. Okay, now. So now compilation errors will be getting occurred because of some syntactical mistakes. Syntactical mistakes. And along with that, okay, the lack of the system resources. Okay, lack of system resources. That means in order to compile your code, whatever the sufficient amount of memory is required, that memory may not be available. Okay, that memory may not be available here. So now inside my mobile, for example, so now I'm having some 16 GB of memory space is their internal space. Whatever the space is available, completely full. I have installed so many applications, I have stored so many photos, images, videos, documents, everything. The memory has been full. But now, when I try to open an application, it is not opening. Why? Sufficient memory is not there. Required resources are not available. There is no space to run that application. So in this case here, we can't run. So in this case, the lack of system resources, nothing but we don't have the proper resources available here to execute your application. In this case, compilation errors will be getting occurred because of the syntactical mistakes and the lack of system resources. Okay, now in this case here, what is the mechanism to handle this kind of compilation errors? Do we have any alternative way to handle this kind of compilation errors? Upon writing that code, I did some mistakes here. I forgot to specify the semicolon. Then what is that? The process to handle those things. We have to correct that. That means we have to go back to the code, specify the semicolon. That means what? Only one mechanism is that we have to modify the code according to the rules, according to the principles of that programming language. Okay? Now, in this case, if there is any compilation errors are available, then at that time, the application execution will not be getting happen. Immediately, it is going to be sending the response back to the developer here. Okay, immediately, it will send the response back to the developer that we are having some syntactical mistakes are available inside that code, so we can't able to go ahead. So now we can't run your application functionalities. Okay, we can't run your application functionalities. So that here, immediately it is going to be sending the response back to the developer to rectify the code and to resubmit the code for the recompilation process. Okay. So now whatever the compilation errors are available, if there is any compilation errors are available, then it will be sending the response back to the developer here. Compilation errors. Whatever the errors has been occurred, now this errors information will be sending back to the developer. So now please modify the code. Please write the code as part of the syntax and the principles of Apex programming language and then resubmit the code again. Upon resubmit the code, again there is some errors are available. Again it will be sending back to the developer. It can't go ahead to execute that. Still it is in the compilation stage only here. Keep on, it is going to be moving until all the statements has been compiled successfully. Once the code has been compiled successfully, okay, once the code has been compiled successfully, then it is going to be sending your code for that execution process here. So then how your code will be getting executed? What is that component? To execute your Apex programming code, what is that component that we have? Apex runtime engine. So now we are having that Apex runtime engine is available, which is going to be executing your Apex programming code here. Okay, we have an Apex runtime engine is available, which is going to be executing your code. It is a runtime environment over here. Once the code has been getting compiled successfully, the compiled code will be sending to the Apex runtime engine. It is a compiled code. Compiled code. The compiled code is going to be sending to the Apex runtime engine. Now, whenever I'm going to be executing this code by using the Apex runtime engine, at that time also it may be raising some errors over here. Upon execution also it is going to be raising some errors. Now, so now whatever the errors has been getting occurred upon executing your code, those are called as what? These errors are called as what? Runtime errors. Okay, runtime errors. Now, these runtime errors are also called as exceptions. Okay, these runtime errors are also called as exceptions. Simply in one word, we can say exception is nothing but runtime error. Okay, runtime error. So now, upon executing your application code, whatever the errors has been getting occurred upon runtime, upon executing. Because in my code, there is no syntactical mistakes. Whatever the code that I have written, it's a clean code. Syntax is correct. But in the logic, whatever you have written, that logic is having some problem. Okay? Logic is having some problem. I have written some wrong logic inside that here. So in this case here, okay, now here in this case, it is raising some runtime errors. Upon executing the code, whatever the errors has been occurred, those are called as runtime errors, which are also called as exceptions. Okay, now in this case, now tell me how can we define an exception basically? Instead of using the word runtime errors, okay, how can we define an exception? How can we define an exception? For example, come to a general scenario. Assume that I'm staying in some Kukatpalli. Every day morning, 6:30 a.m. I'm starting from Kukatpalli. I'm coming to the Amirpet by 7 o'clock because to attend some sessions. So as usual today also, I started from Kukatpalli at morning at 6:30 a.m. So now I'm coming to that Amirpet, okay, on my bike. Now suddenly when I reached to the Terragada, suddenly puncture happened. Okay, the bike tire has been punctured. Now tell me, is it an expected one or unexpected one? Unexpected. Okay. So now whenever I'm going to be traveling, whenever I'm performing some operation, some unexpected things will be getting occurred. Some undesired things will be getting occurred. Okay. Now, so in this case, these kind of unexpected things are called as exceptions. Okay, these are called as exceptions. Like for example, whenever I'm going back to my home from after the session, whenever I'm going back to the home, whenever I'm reaching to that ESI, suddenly I met with an accident. Then, is it an expected one? No, it's an unexpected one. That means what? Whenever I'm performing some operation, some unexpected things will be getting happen, which are called as, okay, which are called as exceptions. So that means what? Exception is nothing but an undesired behavior of an application or an unexpected behavior on application at runtime, not compile time at runtime. My code has been compiled successfully. Okay, my code has been compiled successfully. My bike is running properly. But whenever I'm going to be traveling, suddenly, okay, the bike tire has been punctured. Okay, it's an unexpected thing. It's an unexpected thing. In this case, these kind of unexpected things, these are unexpected behaviors are called as exceptions. So exception is nothing but an undesired behavior or an unexpected behavior of an application at runtime. Okay, now. So now here in this case here, do we have any mechanism to handle these kind of exceptions? Yes. How? For example, come to a general scenario. So now whenever my bike tire has been punctured, okay, at some erragada, then what we can do? Nearby my place, okay, there is a service center is available. I can go to the service center. I can make that bike service, nothing but the repair. And then I can start from there again. I can reach to that session over here. Even though I may be reaching to the session 10 minutes late also, no problem. But I can able to continue the session as well here. I don't want to miss the session because there are some important topics are going on today. I want to get that information. For that one here, so now we can go to the nearest service center, make that bike repaired, and then you can start traveling again. We can reach to that Amirpet, you can attend the session, we can continue the process as it is. That means there is a mechanism is available to handle. Or else, early morning, if you don't have any service center nearby place, for example, nearby that location, one of my friend's room is there. I would like to park my bike inside my friend's room and I can able to catch an auto or a bus. I can start traveling from there. I can reach to the Amirpet, I can attend the session. There is an alternative mechanism is available here. Or else, if nobody is staying in that nearby area, just park the bike beside the road and then you can catch an auto or bus and then you can start traveling, attend the session. When I go back to that place, my bike may be there, may not be there. It's a secondary thing here. But there is an alternative mechanism is available over here. Okay. So now here in this case, there are some alternative mechanisms are available to handle these kind of, okay, runtime errors. Okay. Now, sometimes the people are going to be struggling a lot to wake up in the morning at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Okay. They will put the alarm from 4 o'clock onwards, keep on snoozing finally. They will wake up by 6:30. They will come to the session by 7 o'clock, and once the session has been started, they will start sleeping in the class. Okay? So it's an unexpected thing. It's a common thing which will be happening here. But there is a mechanism. Whenever you are getting sleeping in the class, then just go outside, just to make a face wash and have a cup of tea and come back to the session again. So there is a mechanisms are available to handle these kind of runtime errors. Like the similar way here also, whenever we are executing my application, If there is any runtime errors has occurred, if there is any exceptions are occurred, we can able to handle. Then how can we handle these kind of exceptions here? In order to handle the exceptions, we are having two mechanisms are available here. Okay, to handle that exception, we have two ways are available. The first one is we can able to use the conditional statements. First one is the conditional statements, and the second one is exception handling mechanism. Exception handling mechanism. So these are the two mechanisms are available. These are the two ways are available. Whenever if there is an exception has been getting occurred, to handle those exceptions, we are having some alternative mechanisms that is called as conditional statements or exception handling mechanism. If it is a compilation errors we can't handle. The only way is we have to modify the code again according to the rules, according to the principles of that programming language. If there is a runtime error, that means exception, we can able to handle those exceptions by using either conditional statements or exception handling mechanism. These are the two mechanisms are available over here. Without disturbing that actual flow, we can able to continue that here. Okay, that possibility is available. Okay, now. So now here in this case here, these are the two types of errors are available when coming to the programming. We are having that compilation errors, we are having that runtime errors. To handle the compilation errors, we are having only one mechanism, that is we have to go back to the code, modify the code, write the code in the proper manner based on the syntaxes, based on the rules of that programming language. Then only we have to resubmit the code for the recompilation. Again, it will compile the whole code. If the compilation is successful, then only we can able to execute that code. Upon executing that code, some resources may not be available. Some wrong logic may be available over here. I did not supply the value for a mandatory field. So now in this kind of scenario here, it will be raising the runtime errors also. Like for example, whenever I'm creating an account record, account name is a mandatory field. If I did not supply the value for that name field, will my record will insert? No, record will not insert it here. There is a age field is available. In that age field, I have to enter some numerical, but I have entered some characters, some ABC. Upon click on save button, will the record will be inserted? No. That means what here? Runtime errors will be getting occurred. Upon inserting the record, some errors will be getting occurred over here. Because here, now might be I have written some wrong logic also. Might be I haven't supplied the value for one of the mandatory field. Might be I supplied some wrong input values also. Because of that, it is going to be raising that runtime exceptions. Okay. So now in this case, runtime errors will be getting occurred because of some reasons here. What are those reasons? Now let me explain. Now, so runtime errors will be getting occurred because of some reasons here. Due to the wrong logic implementation. Due to the wrong logic implementation. I have written some wrong logic inside this. Second one, missing the values for the required fields. So there are some mandatory fields are there inside my record, okay? But if I did not enter the value for that mandatory fields, or else due to supplying the invalid input values, okay? Due to supplying the invalid input values. Because of this kind of reasons, the runtime errors will be getting occurred, which are also called as exceptions. Due to some wrong logic here. Syntactical wise it is correct, but the logic wise it is wrong. Okay, logic wise it is wrong. I have written some wrong logic over here. Or else I have supplied some wrong values. Or I forgot to pass a value for one of the mandatory fields. So now here in this case here, whenever we are trying to performing this kind of operation, it is going to be raising that runtime errors, which can be handled with the help of the conditional statements and the exception handling mechanism over here. With the help of these two ways, we can able to handle the runtime errors or exceptions which has been occurred upon executing your piece of code. Okay, clear? Now, so in this case now, when I try to execute this one here, okay, when I try to execute this one, for example here, I written the statement like this. Okay, I written the statement like this here. Now tell me, syntactical wise, do we have any mistakes inside this code? No. Here I forgot to specify the semicolon. For example, now, fine. Syntactical wise, do we have any mistakes inside this? No. There is no syntactical mistake. The correct code is correct. Syntax is correct. But when I try to execute this particular code, it is causing some exceptions over here. Because here I'm performing some division operation here. Okay, I'm performing the division operation which cannot be handled by my Apex runtime. Okay, which cannot be handled by my Apex runtime over here. Simply it is going to be terminating that operation here. Okay, simply it will be terminating that operation inside this. Okay, now. So now here in this case here, okay, now here in this case. Now how can we handle these kind of exceptions? Now let's see practically in this case. In order to handle these kind of runtime errors or exceptions, we are going to be using that either conditional statements or exception handling mechanism. Now we will see the concept of conditional statements. What exactly the conditional statements? So what is the use? Now, the conditional statements. So now what do you mean by conditional statement here? Okay. Based on some conditions, we can execute some statements. Right. So now in this case here, for example, let's see. Assume that this is the code that I am writing here. I have that x value 1200 and the y value 0. When I try to execute up to this part, nothing but till the addition, subtraction and the multiplication, when I click on execute highlighted, the code is executing perfectly without any disturbance. Okay? Without any disturbance, the code is working perfectly. But when I include this particular division operation, then when I click on execute highlight button, then it is causing that. Nothing but the fourth statement is causing this exception here. That means division operation is unable to perform. Why? Because the second number value, y value is equals to 0. That means whenever I'm dividing the number by 0, then the result which will be giving by that operation like as infinitive, which can't be handled by my Apex programming language. So simply it is going to be informing to that Apex runtime. So please terminate the application execution process. Don't execute the remaining statements inside that. And stop executing that application execution process and stop there itself. And then we don't have any handling mechanism. So please display the error message to the user in the technical terms and terminate the application execution process. So in this case, whenever an exception has been getting occurred, immediately it will stop executing that application execution process and it will display that exception message in the technical terms. But as an end user, okay, as a new person, I can't understand what is that error, how to handle that. But in this case, as a developer, it is our responsibility that we need to implement the code, we need to design the application, we have to write the logic in such a way, whenever the user is doing some malfunctioning, whenever the user is supplying some wrong input also, it has to display some proper message to the user which can be understandable by the common people as well. Suppose if it is showing that message like this here. When I click on execute, if it is showing like a system that a math exception divided by 0, then how the normal end user can understand? As a programmer, I can understand here divided by 0. That means somewhere I am dividing the number here. So because of that, here it is causing some exception. I can understand. But the normal end user, a normal business person, how the person can understand what exactly the exception here? Where exactly it has been occurred? At what line number it has been occurred? What is the mistake that I did? How the people can understand here? So in this case, we have to show that error messages in the meaningful format. I don't want to show this technical message to the developer here, to the end user. Because as a developer, I can understand that because I know that development terminology. I know that terminology like as system.math exception divided by 0. Like that I can aware of this terminology. But the normal end user, they can't understand what exactly exception, why it will be getting arise, what is the mistake that I did, at what line number it is causing that. They don't know all these things. So now here in this case here, I would like to show those messages in the meaningful format to the user so that the user can able to enter the values. He can able to correct his mistakes also so that he can supply the right input values so that he can able to get the actual result, whatever he is expecting. For that one here, I would like to guide the people. Okay, I can guide the people here by giving some proper messages to the user. Okay, now. So now here in this case here, okay, now here in this case, I don't want to perform this division operation over here. When, if the y value is equals to 0, I don't want to perform that operation here. If the y value is greater than 0, then do we need to perform this operation? Yes, we can perform that. Suppose if I am giving the value as 1, when I click on execute, the code is working perfectly here. But whenever the code is, the y value is equals to 0, then only it is going to be causing this exception to me over here. I'm unable to perform. So in this case, what I need to do, I need to add a check. I need to add a condition before this division operation. I would like to verify if the y value is equals to 0 or not. If it is equals to 0, don't allow to perform this operation. Don't execute this statement because definitely it will cause some exception over here. So that don't allow to perform this operation, don't execute this statement when the y value equals to 0. If the y value is greater than 0, that means it may be 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 1,000, whatever, then only please allow to perform this operation. That means what? Before executing this statement, first of all, I would like to cross-check whether the y value is greater than 0 or not. If the value is greater than 0, then only I would like to allow the user to perform that operations, or else I don't want to perform this operation. That means what? I would like to decide the execution of this statement based on this y value. Based on that y value, I will decide whether this statement can be executable or the statement should not be executable. That means I have to skip from the execution process. That we can decide here. For that one here, before executing this statement, I want to verify, I want to add a proper check over here. I want to add some conditions if the y value greater than 0 or not. If the y value is greater than 0, then only please allow to perform this operation or else don't allow here. So in this case, whenever you are executing the statement based on some condition result, okay, based on some condition results, then we have to use that conditional statements. Conditional statements are using for what? In order to add one or more number of conditions to be get verified before executing the statements. Okay, before executing the statement, I would like to verify one or more number of conditions which can be added with the help of conditional statements. If the conditions are satisfied, then only execute the statements. If the conditions are failed, don't allow to execute the statements over here. Okay, clear? In this case, whenever you are executing the statements based on the conditions, then we can go with the conditional statements here. Okay? Clear? Now make a note of this one. Conditional statements. Conditional statements are used to add one or more conditions to be get verified before executing the statements. Before executing the statements, I would like to verify one or more number of conditions. If the conditions are satisfied, then we can execute the statements. Else, we can skip the execution of the statement. Else, we can skip the execution of the statement. Now, in this case, what we are doing, If the conditions are satisfied, execute this statement, or else skip this one. That means here I'm changing the control flow. Okay, I'm changing that control flow. Don't execute this statement in the sequential manner. So please jump. Okay, nothing but please jump to the next statement. Don't execute this statement because it will cause some exception. So that jump to the next statement over here. Skip the execution of this statement and then go to that next statement directly. So in this case, we are going to be using that. By using these conditional statements, we can able to change the control flow. Control flow means what? This is the order it is executing the statements one by one. It is executing that statements one by one here. Whenever it is reaching to that, we are verifying the condition here. If the condition is greater satisfied, that means y is greater than 0. Now in this case, what happened? Y value is 0. 0 is greater than 0 now? No, condition is false. So that it will be jumped to that here. Now don't execute this statement here, go to the next statement directly. So that we are changing the control flow of the application execution with the help of conditional statements here. Okay? Now make a note of this one. By using conditional statements, we can change the control flow of the application execution. By using the conditional statements, we can change the control flow of the application execution. Now, then what conditional statements you are aware of generally? If condition, only if, switch also. Those are iterative. While, do while, for loop, those are iterative statements. In this case, when coming to the Apex programming, we have three if conditions are available. Three conditional statements are available. Okay, we have three types of conditional statements are available inside your Apex programming. Apex provides the below three conditional statements. First one, if conditional statement. Second one, switch statement. Third one, ternary operator, which can be denoted as a question mark and a colon symbol. These are the three conditional statements has been given by the Apex programming language to you. If conditional statement and the switch statement and the ternary operator. These are the three conditional statements are available in order to decide whether a group of statements or a block of statements has to be get executed or not. Based on the condition result, we can decide. Previously, when coming to the Apex programming, we are having only two conditional statements. If condition and the ternary operator. We don't have switch statement. Switch statement has been introduced by Salesforce since the Winter 18 release onwards. Okay. So from that Winter 18 release onwards, Salesforce has introduced that the switch statement also. Previously, we don't have switch statement. Okay. Before Winter 18 release onwards, we don't have any switch statement inside your Apex programming. So we are having this switch statement from the Winter 18 release onwards. Okay. Now, then how can we use this conditional statements in order to check the conditions? Now let's see practically in this case. Okay. Now, the first one is if conditional statement. First one is if conditional statement. So if is also one of the conditional statement which has been given by the Apex programming language. Okay, if is also one of the conditional statement has been given by the Apex programming. Okay, if condition is very, very important. Because in every program we are using three things: if condition, for loop, collections. If you know these three features, then development is very, very simple, nothing else. Okay? We no need to learn so many things. If you know these three, because in every program we are using if condition, for loop, and then collections. If you know how to play with these three, then the development is very, very simple. Okay, not much typical. Okay? Now. So because in every program we are using this if condition commonly here. You should be aware of what exactly if condition, how many formats are available. Okay? Now, in this case, let's see what exactly the if condition. If is also one of the conditional statement which has been given by Apex programming language in order to add one or more number of conditions to be get verified before executing that statements. Before executing the statement, we are going to be adding some checks. We are adding some conditions which will be getting verified. Okay, like for example, whenever I'm trying to be inserting the record into an object, we are going to be adding some validations. Before inserting the record, it will fire first, it will verify whether the user has entered the value for all these fields or not. If the user has entered, then only record will be getting sending to the server to insert into that object here. Like the similar way here also, before executing that statement, we can able to verify some conditions here. Now to add this kind of conditions, we are using that if conditional statement. By using this if conditional statement, we can add one or more number of conditions, okay, in before that statements. So based on that condition result, we can decide whether the statements has to be get executed or the statement execution has to be get skipped from that result set here. Okay, so for that reason, we are using this if condition. Okay, now make a note of this one. By using if condition, we can add one or more user-defined conditions, to be get verified before executing the statements. If the specified conditions are satisfied, then we can execute the block of statements. Else, we can execute the different block of statements. Different block of statements. So whenever I'm using this if condition, we are having four formats are available. Okay, we have four syntaxes, we have four formats for the if condition. We have the below four formats for if condition. The first one is simple if condition. Second one is if else condition. Third one is else if condition. Fourth one is nested if condition. These are the four formats are available internally here. Okay, simple if condition, if else condition, else if condition, nested if condition. These are the four syntaxes, these are the four formats are available for your if condition. Then how to use each and every syntax, how to use each and every format, we'll see with some practical examples. Done? Now, so now let's see the simple if condition. So what exactly the simple if condition? What is the syntax? How it will look like? How to use this simple if condition? Now let's see practically in this case. The simple if condition syntax will be looking like this. If we can specify the conditions, and inside the block we can able to write the statements. Okay, write the statements. So this is the syntax we have to follow. If we can specify the conditions, either one or more conditions. If you want to club the multiple conditions, we have to use logical operators. And then we can write the statements here. Okay. In this case, if the specified conditions are satisfied, then only it will enter into the block. Whatever the statement that are specified, these statements will be getting executed. Suppose if the conditions are failed, it will be coming out from that whole if condition directly. It won't enter into the block, it won't execute that statements here. Okay. So that executing this statement is purely we are deciding based on the condition results here. Okay. Now, in this case, if the specified conditions are satisfied, the respective block of statements will be getting executed, or else simply it will be ignoring the execution of the statements. Okay. Now, in this case, make a note here. If all the specified conditions are satisfied, then the associated block of statements will get executed. Else, it will skip the execution of the statements. Else, it will skip the execution of the statements. Then whenever we are adding the condition, then how can we add the condition? What is the syntax to prepare that condition here? Now, each condition to be get prepared with the below syntax. We have to prepare that condition with the below syntax here. The syntax is we have to specify the variable name and an operator and then a value. For example, we can specify rating value equals to some heart. Industry equals to some finance. Annual revenue is greater than some 20 lakhs. And the phone value not equals to null. Is active equals to true. Like that here we can check the conditions here. Upon preparing the condition, we have to follow this syntax. A variable and an operator and the value. So now with which value you are going to compare, with what kind of operator you would like to use. Either equality or comparison. What comparison operators you would like to use? Either less than, greater than, less than or equals to, greater than or equals to what? What comparison operators you would like to use? We can specify that over here. Now, if you want to use some multiple conditions over here, we can add the multiple conditions also, like rating equals to some cold and annual revenue greater than or equals to some 10 lakhs. Phone value not equals to null and email ID is equals to null. And the active status is equals to some yes. And the location equals to some Hyderabad. Like that, we can able to check the multiple conditions also depends upon your requirement here. Control data last. Okay. So write down those conditions here. Have you written that syntax? Okay. Conditions. For the syntax is, we have to specify the variable name and then an operator and then a value. For example, rating equals to some heart. Annual revenue is greater than or equals to some 25 lakhs. Industry equals to some finance. And the location __ C equals to some Pune. And then status equals to some open not contacted. Like that we can able to add some conditions also here. And then phone value not equals to null. Fax is equals to null. Like that we can able to compare. Now we can compare or we can add the multiple conditions as below. Like for example, rating equals to some cold and annual revenue greater than or equals to some 10 lakhs. Industry equals to some finance and active status equals to some yes. And the location equals to some Bangalore. And I would like to specify the phone equals to some null. Like that we can able to add your own conditions also. Not only one condition, we can able to add multiple conditions also inside this. Okay. So now that already told you, upon adding the conditions, not only one, multiple conditions also we can able to add with the help of logical operators. What logical operators that we have? And, are, not. 3 logical operators are available. Any one of that we can use, and with combination also we can use, and we can able to prepare that compound conditions also. Okay. Now, so now tell me in this case, when coming to my program right now, what is the condition we need to add right now over here? Before performing the division operation, what statement you would like to add now? If y value greater than 0, right. Now, if the y value is greater than 0, then only I would like to perform both the division operation and modulus also, because modulus is also doing internally division operation by default. But here it is going to be the division is returning that the quotient value and the modulus is returning that remainder value. So that I would like to cross check both. That means what? If the y value is greater than 0, then only please perform this operation or else skip the execution of these statements here. Okay? Now. So now let me execute this piece of code. Now click on execute. Even though I'm giving the y value equals to 0, the request has been sent without any exceptions. Now tell me in this case how many results will be getting produced. Addition, subtraction, multiplication. These 2 operations will be performed? No. Why? Because the condition is failed. Because your y value is what? 0. 0 is greater than 0? No. Condition is failed. So that it will come out from that complete if condition over here. So that it won't execute these statements. Now, let's see the results. Select the debug only. Now it is going to be performing that operations over here. Addition result is, this is the addition value, subtraction result, and the multiplication result here. We can able to see all these operations. For example here, if I'm passing that y number value as some 50, now when you click on execute, how many operations will happen? All the 5. Because y value is what? 50. 50 greater than 0. Condition is true or not? Yes. It will perform all the operations. Once you click on execute button, you can see all the 5 results here. Select the debug only checkbox. Now we can see all the 5 results. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the modulus results. All the operation results we can able to see. So depends upon that input value, okay, which was applied, we can able to decide that whether these statements can be executable or not. Okay. Now in this case, we are adding the proper conditions. If the conditions are satisfied, then only this block of statements will be executed, or else this block of statements will be skipping from the execution process. Okay. Clear? Now. Clear? Now. So now here in this case, whenever I'm going to be executing this piece of code, generally, as a user's mentality, upon executing the code, the user is expecting 5 results. Okay, user is expecting 5 results. For example, user has entered the input value for the x as 1200, for the y has entered the value as some 30. When he click on execute button, he is expecting 5 results so that he can able to see all the 5 results, whatever he is expecting. Select the debug only checkbox, he can see all the 5 result operations. For example, by mistake, the user has entered the second number value as 0. Now also he is expecting 5 results. Will it be all the 5 results are getting produced over here? No. Only 3 operations are performing, remaining 2 operations are skipping over here. Now when I click on execute, now it is going to be producing only 3 results. In this case, what will be the human mentality in this case? What is the human thought, user's thought? He is expecting 5, but it is showing only 3. He will thought of, there is a problem in the application. Application is not designed well. Application is not working properly. There is a problem in the application, so that I'm getting only 3 results, not all 5. But actually, the problem is not from the application. The problem is from the user side. The problem is from the user's input. User has given some wrong input over here, like some second number as 0. But at that time, these 2 operations cannot be handled. But what logic we have written, the developer, the end user doesn't know. The normal user doesn't know what logic they have written. In this case here, if the application is unable to perform the remaining 2 operations, it has to show some message to the user, right? Boss, you have given the second number value as 0. Because of that, we are unable to perform division and the modulus operation. Then the user can get realized, he will go to the input values, he will correct his mistake, he will enter the correct input values, then he will rerun the application to get the exact results. So at that time, I want to give that indication to the user. If my application is not showing anything, how the user can understand what is the problem? The problem is from the user input, or the problem is from the application side? The user doesn't know. In this case, as a developer, it is our responsibility that we need to write the code in such a way, if the sum of the operations cannot be able to perform, then we have to show the message, we are unable to perform these operations because of this reason. Okay? So now, for example, come to a general scenario. Assume that I'm having a login screen. I've entered the username and the password, where password I have entered wrong. When you click on login button, what will happen? Will it be allowed me to enter into the application? No. Then what it will display? Invalid username or password. Suppose if it is not showing that message, then how do you know what is the problem? Is it a problem from my side? Is it a problem from the application side? How can we get realized? So in this case here, we need to show some message. If the message is not displaying, then how can we convey the user that, well, this is a mistake that you did, so please correct that mistake. Okay? So in this case, we need to show some message also to the user. How can we show that message to the user? That means what? If the operation is performed, then it will be showing the result. If the operation is not performed, then I want to show some different result here. I want to show some different message to the user. For that one here, we are using one more conditional statement here. That is called as if else part. Okay, if else statement. Okay, if else statement. By using this if else statement, we can able to write the true black code and the false black code also. That means what? If the conditions are satisfied, we can execute some piece of code. If the conditions are failed, we can execute some different piece of code also. That possibility is available here. So now let's go to the syntax here. If the conditions are satisfied, we can execute that true black statements. Else, I want to execute that false black statements. False black statement. This is the syntax of true black and the false black statements. If the specified conditions are satisfied, then it will execute the immediate block of statements. Immediate block of statements. Else, it will execute the false block statements. Else it will execute the false block statements. Then how can we use this if else statement? We'll see in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we'll see the remaining formats of if condition along with that switch statement also. In switch statement, again, we are having two formats. Both the formats we'll see practically.